So welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We thank you for joining us once again for our speakers, the Rural FASD Speaker Series. We are absolutely thrilled to be joined by Jessica Boone, who is the Communicative Disorder Assistant from Wellington Kids. Now, we are absolutely thrilled to have her join us. A lot of us here are already familiar with Wellington Kids. Our very good friend, Kim Bennett, the owner of Wellington Kids, and she has been certainly been expanding upon the types of services that they've been doing there. We've also know that Jessica, I think, is one of the folks that have came on. There's a whole bunch of different services that are contained within Wellington Kids now. It's not just Kim with SLP. There's I believe there's also occupational therapy that's there. Jessica obviously is going to be speaking to the communicative disorder aspect, and I suspect more around the probably the receptive and expressive language pieces and some of the things that we see there. And finally, I would also mention that at some point you're going to see in her presentation Wellington Kids website. Jessica wears a dual hat of both being the admin. So when you email Wellington Kids, it's actually her that you're contacting when you contact them. So she will be able to speak obviously to all the different services that are happening there, as well as the services that she provides. So thank you so much, Jessica, for being here today. We do, before you begin, want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe people, and in particular the Algonquin people, of which we work, play, and pray here in the Smith Falls, what is now known as the Smith Falls area. And I will turn it over to you at this point, Jessica.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I want to apologize firsthand. I am getting over a cold. So if you see me mute and drink my tea and cough a little, I apologize. But yeah, so my name is Jessica Danielle Boone, but everyone just calls me JD. And I am a communicative disorder assistant at Wellington Kids, Inc. Yeah, just to note that I did this presentation, I created it, Wellington Kids did not. So if there's any information that maybe is missing, or you have any questions, you can always contact us. And I'm going to be talking about speech and language support in the area. And yeah, some of the contents that I'll be covering is, first, I'll talk about me and the fact that I'm a CDA and a member of CDAC. What is speech and language therapy? If anyone is unclear, I can kind of go over some of the things that we cover. Speech and language support for FASD. I'm also going to be talking a little bit about AAC. What does the speech and language support landscape look like today? Private versus public speech and language support. Then I'm also going to be introducing Wellington Kids and also resources for caregivers surrounding speech and language. So a little bit about me. This is my family. I'm originally from the Maritimes, and I moved to Ottawa to actually be in politics. I loved politics. I loved grassroots organizations. I loved the community organizing. I originally was in political science, and I took my master's in interdisciplinary studies, focusing on social programs and bringing those into communities and sustainable community development. Then the pandemic hit, and I had my first little girl in the world lockdown. And my family's from the Maritimes, so they had that maritime bubble, and we couldn't see them or talk to them really for almost 2 years. My daughter hadn't met them till she was almost 2. And so we had noticed a lot of our resources were closed down because of the pandemic, and all I really had was my community. I had gone door to door introducing myself in my community, which actually is not unlike me, and started joining like these mom groups and just different things to be able to get a sense of my own community. I also was new here, so I really didn't know anybody. Um, and I did notice that there were a lot of moms struggling to get support and get resources because everything was shut down. And I was doing things that were just natural to me, and that included speech and language activities, which I really didn't know I was doing. And so I had people approaching me in these groups to help them, and I became friends with them. I started helping them with their children, and it really just became a natural thing. And then when things started opening back up, I don't know if it was a SLP or a CDA that had come into one of the groups, and they were giving out resources. And I was looking at them and I'm like, what is this? And they were like, oh, this is like speech and language therapy. Here's what they cover. And I, it was just mind blowing. I'm like, oh my goodness, I've been doing this for free for years. So I looked into it, and I fell in love with the field. I went and got my certification in communicative disorder assistance, and I've been doing it ever since. I had a placement in CHIO doing AAC, and then I had my second placement with Wellington Kids, and I got hired out of Wellington Kids. So I really love it. I only work with the pediatric population, but communicative disorder assistants can work with the adult population as well. Um, yeah, just to speak on a CDA versus an SLP, because I get this question a lot. CDAs do the intervention, so we do all the therapy, whereas the SLPs will do the assessment. They can also do therapy, but they mainly focus on the assessments, they make the goals, and then the CDAs will follow through on the goals with the client or the patient. Part of being a CDA is you have to be a member of CDAC, which is the Communicative Disorder Association of Canada. I'm also a member, but I'm also part of the board. I haven't enrolled yet. I'm switching over from being a student rep to being a part of the board. But yeah, so they will basically go through your credentials and make sure that you've had the proper education, that you've checked all the boxes on the types of placements that you need, the hours that you need, the clinical background, and everything to be a qualified CDA. And yeah, that's where I am today. So what is speech and language therapy? Um, I wanted to just touch on all the topics that speech and language therapy actually covers, because I regularly get a shock when I tell people that it's not just articulation, it's not just stuttering, it's so much more. Um, they cover all supports for communication. And I just put a note that there's a difference between speech and language. Speech is more of your fluency, your prosody, your articulation, whereas language is like the content. And yeah, so this is a list of all the things that speech and language can cover. So articulation, expressive and receptive language. So how you're receiving language, how you're comprehending it, and how you're expressing it. Memory and comprehension skills, social and pragmatic skills. This one always, we do work on social skills. There's also tabletop and play-based intervention. I just need a sip of tea, sorry. Um, So I really love that we're moving into a more play-based intervention. I do this a lot with, say, toddlers or the preschool age group. And basically, it's a strategy different than sitting at a table with cards, which works great for certain goals. But play-based is more, hmm, the child is already engaged with their interest. They're already playing with something. And now you're joining them in play and bringing the language skills to this activity. So they're more interested, they're already engaged. Now they're participating and they don't even realize that they're, um, making all this progress. It's great. Yeah. We also cover gestalt language processing. So there are strategies surrounding different ways that people process and AAC. So that is augmentative and alternative communication. And I will talk about this more later because it is one of my favorite subjects. Fluency in voice, this is stuttering. Um, Literacy, this is another thing that people are shocked to know that we do cover literacy and work on phonological awareness skills. So this includes, rhyming, syllable awareness, word awareness, learning about all the different morphemes, all that great stuff. And just a little note, here is communication. So, yeah. Speech and language support for FASD. So I wanted to bring this component in because obviously we're here today. Support surrounding speech, motor planning, programming, auditory discrimination, articulation, expressive and receptive language skills. These are just some of the things that we can cover if this is the goal. But just to note that every child is different and they're unique and their therapy plan should reflect this. So you might not cover all these, you might not need to cover all of these goals. You might need to cover all these goals. It's going to look different for every child and it's going to be tailored for this specific child. AAC. Okay, so I'm so excited. AAC is augmentative and alternative communication, and I don't know how many people here are familiar with it, but if you're not, I'm going to go through it. And if you have something to add at the end or I forgot something, please join in. I love hearing all about your experiences or some strategies you've used or if you've used it yourself. I love hearing about it. The first A is augmentative communication. And this is when you're adding something to speech. So this could be the communication boards, this could be sign language. And then the second A is alternative communication. And this is when you need a different way of communication. So this could be your speech output. There's also two types of AAC offered. So there's unaided AAC. So this does not require a physical aid or tool. And you'd be surprised, we actually all use AAC in some form. So this is unaided AAC is facial expressions, it's body language, it's your gestures, and it also includes sign language. And then we have aided AAC, and this is what uses tools or materials. So this would be your symbol boards, your communication books. There's pod books. There's so many different types of, or not types, but different materials for AAC. iPads, there's all kinds of programs in the iPads. You have low tech all the way up to high tech where I've programmed eye gaze boards. So you would have a client or a patient and they would have there's low tech eye gaze board. So it's basically a giant board. I should have had a picture on it. It'd be easier if you could see it. And wherever they look, there is a strategy to figure out what they're spelling or what you associate it with a color, you associate it with a word. and they can spell out their words that way. There's also eye gaze boards that are on iPads now. I believe it's the Grid that does one, and there's more, but the Grid definitely does. And wherever they look on this board that you program is what they're speaking, and they can speak using the symbols given on the iPad. It's actually incredible. It's so cool to see. Yeah, I had one patient who was typing on his eye gaze board an email faster than I could type it on a keyboard. It was just amazing to see. Where can I find sports? So there is support everywhere. It's just not as easy to see, I guess. Um, Private clinics will have some type of AAC support or know where you can get it. The schools do have it. They typically will have you might notice it next time you go to a school. There'll be little schedules or like visual schedules. There might be symbols everywhere. There's communication boards on classroom doors or chalkboards now because it benefits more than just the people who are nonverbal. It benefits all kids. So yeah, they're everywhere. You can get them from AAC clinics. CHIO has an augmentative and alternative communication clinic. They're really great. But I will talk more about them and what they can offer. There are specific AAC clinics. There are specific private and public AAC clinics. There's also teachers pay teachers. There's online supports where you can order communication books. You can order customized communication books. You can also download apps and create them yourselves. It's everywhere. You just don't see it until you look for it. It's so interesting. And then myths about AAC. Sorry, I need to drink a tea. There are a few myths about AAC that I love to go over. There's just some kind of, I don't know, miscommunication about what AAC does or what it prevents. And I just want to be able to bust those myths for everyone if anyone has any questions about it. The first one is that it's only used by people who cannot communicate verbally. It's used by a variety of communicators. This can be kiddos or people that communicate nonverbally. It could be in the classroom that helps children that need that visual schedule. We have symbols everywhere that we use all the time. The bathroom symbols, you're traveling, that is a form. It's also used for people that maybe can't articulate certain words properly, and they use it for a support to help them communicate. And then it's also used for people that are learning a second language. Another myth is that the primary goal of communication is to express wants and needs. And that's actually not true. For most people, expressing wants and needs is secondary to social expression. We need that social expression and that bond and that connection. And that's what AAC can bring to people who can't necessarily articulate that. This is a big one. Using AAC will delay speech development. Not true. Studies show that the use of AAC actually improves speech development, where it can be argued that it improves language development in all cases, and should be noted that the most sophisticated voice output communication aid cannot be as efficient or smooth as good speech. So we see this a lot where maybe they're starting with AAC and it does develop into expressive language. Another myth, and this is kind of a new concept, is this idea of robust vocabulary. So the myth is that we should not overwhelm somebody with access to too many symbols. Realistically, we actually should give them more symbols than they know. We should give them robust vocabulary. So this way they can learn new symbols. And you're also not the gatekeeper of what they can say. So instead of just having stop and go or I want and help, those are great things to say and they do express our needs, but that might not necessarily be what they need to say. And if they don't have what they want to say on the board, they're not going to use it. So we need to have things that are about commenting, are about the weather, that go beyond those wants and needs, that are talking about needing space or sensory needs, things like that, that they're going to want to say. And so therefore they're going to use the boards or use the mode they're using. Another and the last myth I have, there's no cognitive or behavioral prerequisite to use it. Yeah, there's no prerequisite. You don't need to have certain amount of symbols. You don't need to have so many words or anything like that. Your SLP is going to set the goals and figure out what best mode of AAC will be for that child or that person, but there is no exact prerequisite to use AAC in general. So yeah, that's my blurb for AAC. What does speech and language support? What does the speech and language support landscape look like today? We're definitely seeing an increase in things that we haven't seen in the past. There is a shortage of CDAs and SLPs. We need more CDAs. We need more SLPs. There is a shortage in resources. There can be up to a 1-year wait in school therapy. That's not the case for all schools. If they have their program set in place in the school, the children might get in right away. But we are seeing people come to the clinic who are saying that they have a year wait in the school system because there's just so many kids that need help and there's just not enough people to help them. And then it can be up to 2.5 years wait in the public healthcare therapy. So I only know CHIO, and it is around a 2-year wait. And they do need certain things to be able to qualify to get AAC help and support in at least in CHIO. I want to say it was 20 symbols, and then you do an assessment with the SLP, and then they'll recommend some kind of mode of AAC. But yeah, it's definitely a long wait list for some places, and even in the private clinics, there can be a wait list. Public versus private speech and language therapy. So like I mentioned, with publicly funded, it is covered through OHIP or it is covered in the school, and there are large wait times. The private speech clinics, it's not covered. It'll be covered through your extended healthcare insurance if you have it. So if you don't, it isn't going to be covered. And some private clinics do have wait lists. Ours does not right now. So there are some that are open to new clients, which is great. Again, the funding is different. The resources may be different. You might have a school that doesn't have access to all kinds of iPads that they're using. The number of sessions is also different. That's the big one. So I'm not sure. I know for CHIO, I think it was 6 sessions before they, where they get all the information they need and set you up, do the parent training, and send you on your way, and then you'll complete therapy separately. And for the schools, they do, I want to say it's 6-week blocks. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong though, but it is 6 weeks blocks. And then there's a reassessment period, and then you're back to doing therapy again after those 6 weeks blocks. And then with private, it's as much as you want to come. You can go for the year, you can go once a week, you can ask to go bi-weekly. That is the nice thing about private speech, is if, say, you didn't make that 6-week block, you can go to private speech and get the therapy that you want right now. Age matters. CHIO is for children. Wellington Kids is under 18. I think Language Express only does until their school age now. So we're transitioning into those clinics that we're taking on early preschoolers and toddlers. And once they hit the school system, or once they hit school age, they're going into the school system, into speech and therapy there. Yeah, so you could age out of some programs, where that is the nice thing about private speech, at least the private speech clinics I know, is that if like under 18, you have a wider age range to go to it versus somewhere else that maybe they age out with the school age. And every clinic is different. So I can only speak for the clinics I know and that I've had experience with. There are so many different areas and resources that other clinics have. Not all private clinics have access to AAC. They take on different age groups. They might have a ton of SLPs and CDAs, they might not. So every clinic is going to be different on the services that they give you. And then because I want to be able to give you guys access to resources, this is mine. Wellington Kids is one avenue you can take if you are looking for private speech and language therapy. If you have questions, if you want to reach out, necessarily you have questions about what you should do, or should you go to speech, should you wait, anything like that, we're super happy to answer any questions that you have. And this is just one resource that is available in your area. We are a private speech and language therapy clinic. The SLP, as you mentioned, was Kim Bennett. She's the lead SLP, and she's also one of the co-owners. And then we also have an occupational therapy side to the clinic. And the lead OT and also one of the co-owners is Courtney Barton. We have occupational therapists, we have occupational therapy assistants, we have 2 SLPs and 3 CDAs and an SLA. We have also just opened up the new location in Smiths Falls, if any of you guys have seen it or heard of it. So it's closer. And we also have the location in Kempville. That's the original. And we're taking on new clients. They're really great in supporting neurodiversity. They are offering screenings, assessments, individual intervention. We're now expanding and offering some workshops and AAC programming. The workshops is fairly new, so if any of you have an idea for a workshop that you would love to know more about, or would love to learn, like, they're very open to creating that workshop that is accessible. So yeah. And then I also wanted to I struggled with those resources for caregivers page, because I was like, oh, there's so many great ones and I want to give them to you all, but I also don't want to overload you with things that might not necessarily apply to what you're looking for. So if you have any topics that you're curious about, I can certainly give out more resources on those topics that you're interested in. Or if there's services that you're interested in, I just kind of gave some resources for the services that are in the area because I want everyone to have access and know what's available to them. Aside from Wellington Kids, obviously we're here, but there's some great resources in the area. There's Language Express, there's CHIO, there's Kids Inclusive, and then I also put a couple of resources for material. I should have put Teachers Pay Teachers on there. If you're looking for resources to do with your kiddos, like materials to do with your kiddos or activities. Teachers Pay Teachers has some really great stuff on there. Some of it you have to pay for, but there's also a free filter. So I get the free stuff all the time. There's Boom Card Learning, which are really great. Peachy Speechy, she explains like articulation strategies and some things that you can do to help. So if you're already in therapy for articulation and you want some additional support or you're having trouble at home doing those home programs, I would definitely refer to some of her videos. They're great. I send them home with parents so that they can get an idea of like where your tongue placement should be, how your teeth are. She explains it really well. And then there's meaningful speech. So if any of you are interested in Gestalt language processing, they offer courses to help navigate that, understand it better, and if you're also an educator, to how to go about therapy, which is Gestalt language processors. And then of course the Hannon Center, they have some great courses for parents, for educators, for SLPs. So if you're wanting to learn more about play-based therapy, if you're wanting to learn more about activities or language for ASD, they have some great programs for parents and caregivers and educators. I've taken some of their courses, and it is definitely changes your mindset from when you're in therapy, or even just talking to your own kids and you're asking them questions and asking them questions, moving from that question base where they're kind of like getting annoyed with you and they don't want to answer and to commenting and using that play-based child-centered approach, and doing things that they're already engaged in and interested in, and focusing more on commenting with sprinkling in some questions, and then seeing how language, expressive language, is developing through that is just, yeah, it's really great. I definitely recommend. And there's so many more resources I could give you. So if you have any topics, like I said, or have any questions, please reach out and I can certainly give you more resources. And that's my spiel. I hope you enjoyed. Oh, you're muted, Rob.
So Jessica, this is fantastic. I'm actually going to get you to go back a slide for me,
Okay.
if you can do that.
I don't think I can. I never use Google
Oh,
Slides,
is that
so
right? Oh, okay.
I can go into where it'll like bring me to the editing thing, which is fine. Um,
While you're doing that, and the reason I want to go back to the previous slide is that was the spot where perfect, absolutely. As I was watching the audience here, this was the slide where everyone was grabbing their phones and taking notes and really jotting down the information, because this was absolutely fantastic. Everybody here, I can tell you right now, everybody here is basically nodding their heads in agreement that this has been a wonderful presentation. Just two or three things, I think, in terms of just my own reflections. The first one is when we think about our kiddos living with FASD right now in particular, if you get an opportunity to go back into our YouTube channel, look at Kim Bennett's presentation from 2019. There's one particular piece of information that she shared in terms of the importance of SLP support and CDA support. And the reason for it is because there was a study done in the Netherlands just the year before that, where they determined 90% of children living with FASD have delays in their muscle jaw development.
Mhm.
So the impact off of that is they are delayed literally from the very beginning of their life in terms of being able to communicate in order and being just able to interact and to be able to engage socially right from the start. And so we know when we look at all the different assessments that are required for the diagnosis of FASD, the psychological assessment, the OT assessment, the speech language assessment, the documented social history, and so on, it is the SLP who almost always is the first one to realize, oh, there may be something here we need to explore further. So that is why for us, your presentation in the importance of speech and language is the early intervention. This is the earliest possible intervention that we can have, and we know the impact that comes off of it. Because if the child at age 1 and 2 is not developing that ability to interact socially, if their speech is delayed, they get into preschool, they get into kindergarten, they're not making friends at that point. They're now becoming delayed academically, and then it just exasperates from there. They hit junior grades, and now the gap becomes even larger. They hit they hit high school, and now we're dealing with mental health challenges, and we're dealing with even further delays from a social skills development and so on. And all of that can be impacted by the work that you do. The work that a CDA does in terms of being able to put those interventions in place and creating that ability and that potential for them to be able to communicate to others, whether it's through AAC or whatever other means, it's life-changing. And it's life-changing for not just the child, but it's life-changing for the family. It's life-changing for our community. It's life-changing for everybody. So again, this has been a wonderful presentation. I want to really bring out the fact that you guys have expanded to Smith Falls now. Yes, I don't know if you can hear the clapping, which is absolutely fantastic. We
Yes,
also know that
I do
Courtney,
want to note though, I do want to note that the occupational therapy side is only in Kempville, but we
yeah,
have the speech and language therapy in Smith Falls. And yeah, it's great.
yeah, and we know we're also very familiar with the work that Courtney does. And the biggest one that we do not find ever is the fact that you are FASD informed, Courtney is FASD informed, Kim is FASD informed, because it is different. It looks different than what you would do for a lot of other folks in our community. And so to know that we have this local resource, everything from the sensory profile standpoint, everything from the intervention standpoint for speech and language, everything from that diagnostic and being able to identify exactly what the programming and where the gaps are from an SLP standpoint is all absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for this. Again, if you're wanting to get a hold of Jessica or anybody out of Wellington Kids, I want to make sure that go to the website, contact them from there. Can you just repeat again, what is that www number for Wellington Kids?
So it'll be under admin@wellingtonkids.ca is the email. And then, yeah, I think I want to say it's at the next one. Yeah, this is just a link. But if you Google Wellington Kids, which is now Wellington Kids Incorporated, you'll see the link, and yeah, there's tons of information on there as well and all the services that they offer.
Perfect. And as you can see, that's the very first link that you have listed there. I do
Mhm.
want to acknowledge as well, our friends at Language Express here in our area are also really good, also FASD informed. Obviously, like you made mention, we know what their waiting lists are looking like right now, though there is a
Yeah.
demand. Also our friends from Kids Inclusive. also provide these services, and they also do a wonderful job. So knowing that and then finally, from Chio's standpoint, is also a wonderful resource to have. So yes, please, people know. And at this point, we will we will wrap up the recording for our studio audience. And once again, we thank Jessica Boone, or JB, I guess, as you sometimes go by, from
JD.
JD.
Jessica
Sorry,
Dan.
okay,
Yeah.
JD.
Don't worry.
And taking the time to join with us today, and hopefully we will make a difference in people's lives once they have this information. So
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. And I want to just say thank you for everyone who came. And it's incredible to see how many people participated. And you came on your Saturday to get more experience and gain more knowledge. And it's incredible to see the effort.
And so with that, we bid adieu to our studio audience, and just remind you that next month we will be back with our next speaker in our speaker series, and look forward to seeing you then.
Oh, I do have one more thing to say. Sorry. Um, October is AAC Awareness Month. And so if anyone is looking for AAC equipment or devices, this is the month for the sales. So it's 50% off all of the applications. I don't know if anyone's interested, but if they can be pricey. So if you are interested in buying one or buying a subscription, make sure you do it in October because that's when they're more affordable.
Wonderful to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you.